My name is Tilly, and I'm 53 years old. For 28 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage. We owned this beautiful beach house on Martha's Vineyard that I believed would be our forever retreat, the place where Marcus and I would grow old together, watching sunsets from our deck. But sometimes life has a way of showing you that the people you trust most are capable of the deepest betrayal. What I discovered about my husband and our beach house changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the importance of reading the fine print. Before I tell you what happened in our beach house, let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that'll make you think twice about who you really know. Let me paint you a picture of what my life looked like before everything fell apart. Marcus and I had what everyone called a solid marriage. He was 55, a successful architect who'd built his reputation designing luxury homes across New England. Our two children, Emma and Jake, were both in college now, finally giving us the empty nest years we'd been looking forward to. The beach house in Martha's Vineyard wasn't just a vacation home to us. We'd purchased it 15 years ago initially as an investment property, but it quickly became the heart of our family's happiest memories. Every summer, every long weekend, every holiday, we could manage we'd pack up and drive the 3 hours from Boston to our little slice of paradise. The house sat on 2 acres, with direct beach access featuring 5 bedrooms each, with its own view of the ocean. Marcus had even renovated the master suite himself, adding French doors that opened onto a private balcony overlooking the waves. But 3 months ago, things started changing in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. Marcus began working longer hours, or at least that's what he told me. He'd leave for the office early and come home late, always with some excuse about a demanding client or a project deadline. His phone, which used to sit casually on the kitchen counter, was now permanently attached to his hand, always face down, always silent. The weekends were the worst part. For years, Friday afternoons meant packing our bags and heading to the beach house together. It was our ritual, our sacred time. But suddenly, Marcus had weekend site visits and emergency consultations. He'd leave Friday morning with his overnight bag, claiming he needed to meet clients at various project locations. I'd spend those weekends alone in our Boston home, telling myself that his career demands were just temporary. Then came that Friday afternoon in late September that changed everything. I'd been feeling disconnected from Marcus for weeks, and on impulse, I decided to surprise him with a spontaneous weekend at the beach house. Maybe we could reconnect, I thought. Maybe I could remind him of what we had together in that special place. I loaded my car with groceries and wine planning to cook his favorite seafood dinner and recreate the romance we seemed to have lost. The 3-hour drive gave me time to imagine our reunion, to picture his surprised smile when he found me there waiting for him. But when I pulled into our circular driveway, I saw a car I didn't recognize, a silver BMW with the Massachusetts plates. My heart started racing, though I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Marcus had invited a client to see the property. Maybe it was a contractor working on something he'd forgotten to mention. I parked quietly and approached the house through the side garden where the kitchen windows offered a clear view inside. What I saw through those windows shattered my world into a million pieces. Marcus was there, but he wasn't alone, and he certainly wasn't working. He was standing behind a woman I'd never seen before, his arms wrapped around her waist as she stirred something on our stove. She was young, probably in her early 30s, with long blonde hair that caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through our windows. She wore a flowing summer dress that looked expensive, and when she turned to kiss Marcus, I could see she was beautiful in that effortless way that comes with youth. But it wasn't just their embrace that devastated me. It was how comfortable they looked together, how natural their movements were in my kitchen using my cookware, drinking from my wine glasses. This wasn't a new affair or a moment of weakness. This was a couple who'd done this before, many times before. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, watching my husband of 28 years laugh with this stranger in the space that held our most precious memories. They moved around each other like dancers who knew each other's steps, and when she reached up to adjust his collar, the gesture was so intimate, so familiar, that I felt physically sick. I backed away from the window and walked to my car on shaking legs. I couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think straight. All I knew was that I needed to get away from there before they saw me. The 3-hour drive home passed in a blur of tears and disbelief, my mind racing with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except the image of Marcus and that woman in our kitchen. But I also couldn't bring myself to confront him directly. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. Sarah Martinez came highly recommended by a lawyer friend of mine. She was a former police detective who specialized in matrimonial investigations, and she had the kind of straightforward manner that made me trust her immediately. I told her everything I'd witnessed, and she listened without judgment, taking notes and asking the kinds of questions that made it clear this wasn't her first case involving unfaithful spouses. Within a week, Sarah had answers that were somehow both better and worse than I'd imagined. The woman's name was Cassandra Wells, and she was 32 years old. She worked as an interior designer for high-end residential projects, which was how she'd met Marcus 8 months earlier. He'd hired her firm to design the lobby renovation for his office building, and according to Sarah's research, their professional relationship had quickly turned personal. But the details Sarah uncovered went far beyond a simple affair. Cassandra had quit her job 3 months ago, and Marcus was now supporting her financially. He'd rented her an apartment in the Back Bay, paid for her car lease, and had been giving her what appeared to be a monthly allowance of several $1,000s. The money was coming from our joint savings account, money I'd thought we were saving for retirement. The most devastating part was learning about their relationship with our beach house. According to Sarah's surveillance and investigation, Marcus and Cassandra had been using the property as their private retreat for the past 2 months. They'd established a routine of spending long weekends there, and Cassandra had even started referring to it as our place in social media posts that Sarah had managed to access. Through careful observation and some strategic conversations with neighbors, Sarah discovered that the couple had been living there like newlyweds. Cassandra had brought personal belongings, redecorated parts of the house to her taste, and had even started a small herb garden on the back patio. The neighbors who didn't know about our marital situation had begun referring to her as Marcus's wife, and assumed I was an ex-wife who no longer came around. But perhaps the most crushing revelation was that Marcus had already consulted with a divorce attorney. Sarah had traced a payment from our account to a prominent family law firm in Boston. When she did some discreet inquiring, she learned that Marcus had been seeking advice about asset division, specifically asking about how to retain ownership of a beach property in Martha's Vineyard in a potential divorce settlement. The legal consultation had taken place 6 weeks ago, which meant Marcus had been planning our divorce before I even knew our marriage was in trouble. He'd been calculating how to keep our beach house while I was still believing we'd grow old there together. Sarah also uncovered evidence that Cassandra was under the impression that Marcus was already separated from me. She'd been telling friends that her boyfriend was going through an amicable divorce and that they were planning to move in together permanently once his business arrangements with his ex-wife were finalized. She'd even started planning renovations for the beach house, collecting Pinterest boards full of design ideas for what she called their forever home. The financial investigation revealed even more betrayal. Over the past 8 months, Marcus had spent nearly $60,000 on Cassandra, money that came from our joint accounts, our retirement savings, and even a home equity line of credit he'd opened without telling me. He'd bought her jewelry, paid for vacations, covered her living expenses, and had recently purchased an engagement ring that cost more than my car. When Sarah presented me with her final report, complete with photographs, financial records, and documented evidence of their relationship, I felt like I was looking at the life of a stranger. The man I'd been married to for nearly 3 decades had not only betrayed our vows, but had been systematically dismantling our life together while planning his new one with someone else. The most painful part wasn't even the affair itself. It was realizing that Marcus had been living a completely double life for months lying to me every single day while planning his future with another woman in the home that represented everything beautiful about our relationship. I couldn't put off the confrontation any longer. Armed with Sarah's evidence, I decided to face Marcus directly. I waited until a Thursday evening when I knew he'd be home, and I spread all of Sarah's photographs and documents across our dining room table like evidence in a courtroom. When Marcus walked in and saw the display, his face went through a series of emotions: surprise, guilt, anger, and finally defiance. For a moment, he stood there in silence, and I thought maybe he'd apologize. Maybe he'd try to explain or show some remorse for what he'd done to our family. Instead, he sat down across from me and said, "I guess you know everything now." His voice was calm, almost relieved, as if he was glad he didn't have to pretend anymore. "How long were you planning to lie to me, Marcus?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "I wasn't lying, exactly. I was just figuring things out. Tilly, we've been drifting apart for years. You know it, and I know it. We've become roommates, not lovers. When was the last time we really talked, really connected? You're so focused on the kids, on your book club, on everything except us." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. After 28 years of marriage, after building a life together, raising children together, supporting his career through countless late nights and client dinners, he was reducing our entire relationship to my supposed failures as a wife. "So this is my fault?" I asked, gesturing to the photographs of him and Cassandra. "I made you have an affair. I made you steal money from our accounts. I made you plan a divorce behind my back." Marcus's expression hardened. "Don't be dramatic, Tilly. I didn't steal anything. That money is as much mine as it is yours. And yes, I've talked to a lawyer. We both know this marriage is over. We're just going through the motions at this point." "What about our beach house?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Were you planning to discuss that with me, or were you just going to take it?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, and for the first time that evening he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Actually, I've been thinking about that. Cassandra loves that house, really appreciates it in a way you never did. You always complained about the drive, about the maintenance, about having to close it up for the winter. She sees it the way I do, as a sanctuary, a place of beauty and peace. I bought that house with my inheritance money, Marcus. My father's life insurance policy paid for most of it. That was 15 years ago, Tilly. Since then, I've put hundreds of thousands into renovations and improvements. I've maintained it, upgraded it, made it what it is today. Any court will see that I have significant investment in that property." The casual way he discussed dismantling our life, the matter-of-fact tone he used when talking about taking away the place that held our most precious family memories, made me realize I was looking at a stranger. This wasn't the man I'd married, the man who'd held my hand during my father's funeral, who'd cried with joy when our children were born. But Marcus wasn't done. "Cassandra and I have been talking about our future," he continued, his voice taking on a dreamy quality that made me want to scream. "We want to get married as soon as the divorce is finalized. She's young enough that we could maybe have children together, start fresh. The beach house would be perfect for raising a family." "Children," I whispered. "You're 55 years old, Marcus. Our children are already grown." "Exactly," he said. "Our children are adults. They don't need us anymore. But Cassandra and I could have a real family, a young family. We could fill that beach house with laughter and love again." The implication was clear. Our family, our children, our life together hadn't been real in his mind. We'd just been practice for the life he really wanted with someone else. Marcus stood up and looked down at me with something that almost looked like pity. "I'll be staying at Cassandra's apartment for the next few weeks while we sort out the details. My lawyer will be in touch with yours about the divorce proceedings. I hope we can keep this civil, Tilly. There's no reason we can't both move on and be happy." He walked toward the stairs, presumably to pack some clothes, then turned back to me. "Oh, and Cassandra and I are planning a long weekend at the beach house next month. It'll be good for us to spend some real time there to start making it feel like home. I hope you can respect that and give us some space." As I sat alone at my dining room table, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's betrayal, I realized that Marcus hadn't just broken my heart. He'd underestimated me completely. He was so confident in his plans, so sure that I'd accept whatever settlement he offered, that he'd never bothered to check one very important detail about our beach house, a detail that was about to change everything. The next few days passed in a blur of grief and rage. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, could barely function. My sister came to stay with me, bringing casseroles and tissues and endless patience as I cried through the story again and again. Emma and Jake called from college, worried about their father's sudden absence from the house, and I found myself in the impossible position of trying to explain their parents' divorce without destroying their relationship with their father. But in the midst of all this emotional chaos, I knew I needed to understand my legal position. I called Patricia Hernandez, the attorney who'd handled my father's estate years ago, and made an appointment to discuss the divorce and property division. Patricia's law office overlooked Boston Common, and sitting in her mahogany-paneled conference room, I felt like I was preparing for battle. I brought copies of all the financial records Sarah had gathered, along with the deed to our beach house and other property documents. "Let's start with the beach house," Patricia said, spreading the paperwork across her desk. "Marcus seems to think he has a strong claim to it, but let me review the ownership structure." She spent nearly an hour going through the documents, occasionally making notes or pulling out additional papers from my father's estate file. Finally, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Tilly," she said slowly, "I have some interesting news. First, you're correct that the initial purchase of the beach house was made entirely with funds from your father's life insurance policy. In Massachusetts, that would typically make it your separate property, not marital property subject to division." My heart leaped with hope, but Patricia held up a hand. "However, Marcus does have a point about the improvements and maintenance over the years. Courts sometimes award partial interest to the non-owner spouse when they've contributed significantly to improving separate property." My hope crashed back down, but Patricia wasn't finished. "But there's something else here that's very interesting. Do you remember 5 years ago when we discussed converting some of your investments and updating your estate planning?" I nodded vaguely. Patricia had handled several financial matters for me over the years, and I'd always trusted her guidance completely. At that time, I recommended that you formalize your sole ownership of the beach house by updating the deed and title. You were concerned about liability issues related to rental properties, and we discussed the possibility of someday using the house as an investment property. "I remember signing papers," I said slowly, "but I honestly didn't pay much attention to the details. You said it was routine financial planning." Patricia smiled, and for the first time in weeks, I saw hope in someone's face when they looked at me. "Tilly, you've been the sole legal owner of that beach house for 5 years. When we updated the deed, we removed Marcus's name entirely. The property is 100% yours. He has no legal claim to it whatsoever." The room seemed to spin around me. "Are you sure? How is that possible? Wouldn't Marcus have had to sign something?" "Not necessarily. Since the house was purchased with your separate funds, and since you were updating your estate planning documents at the same time, the transfer was perfectly legal. Marcus would have received copies of all the paperwork, but—" Patricia paused, looking through her files. "Actually, looking at our correspondence from that time, it appears all the documents were mailed to your attention at your Boston address. If Marcus was like most husbands when it comes to financial paperwork—" "He never read any of it," I finished. "He always said that stuff was too boring and that he trusted me to handle the business side of our investments." "Exactly. So while he's been planning to claim half of your beach house in a divorce settlement, he actually has zero legal right to the property. In fact, if he's been using it without your permission for his affair, he's technically been trespassing on your property." The implications of what Patricia was telling me began to sink in. Marcus had been so arrogant, so confident in his plans to take our beach house and start his new life there with Cassandra that he'd never bothered to verify his legal right to the property. He just assumed that 28 years of marriage gave him automatic ownership of everything we'd built together. Patricia, I said, an idea beginning to form in my mind. What would happen if someone was using my property without permission and I decided to reclaim it? Well, she said carefully, as the sole owner, you have every right to control who uses your property and when. You could revoke permission for anyone to be there, change the locks, even pursue trespassing charges if necessary. And if I wanted to use the property for income purposes, say short-term rentals. Patricia's smile grew wider. As the sole owner, you have every right to operate any legal business from your property. Vacation rentals are completely legal in that area, though you'd want to check local zoning laws and obtain any necessary permits. As I left Patricia's office that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: power. For the first time since discovering Marcus's betrayal, I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the rightful owner of the property he was planning to steal, and I had every legal right to determine its future. Marcus and Cassandra were planning their romantic long weekend at their beach house, completely unaware that they were about to discover just how wrong they'd been about who controlled their destiny. The idea that was forming in my mind was bold, maybe even a little crazy, but it was also perfectly legal and completely justified. If Marcus wanted to play games with our property and our marriage, he was about to learn that I could play games too, and I intended to win. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into planning with the kind of focused intensity I hadn't felt in years. If Marcus and Cassandra wanted to play house in my beach house, they were going to discover that the real owner had some very different ideas about how the property should be used. First, I called a locksmith service in Martha's Vineyard and arranged to have all the locks changed. I explained that I was the sole property owner and that I needed to revoke access for unauthorized users. The locksmith was completely professional and didn't ask questions beyond verifying my ownership documents. Next, I contacted a security company and had a comprehensive alarm system installed, complete with cameras covering all entry points and common areas. The technician who installed the system mentioned that many vacation rental owners use similar setups to protect their properties and monitor guests. That comment sparked my next phase of planning. I spent hours researching vacation rental platforms like Airbnb, VRBO, and Booking.com. I studied pricing for comparable properties in Martha's Vineyard, seasonal demand patterns, and guest reviews for similar beachfront homes. What I discovered was fascinating. Our beach house, with its 5 bedrooms, direct beach access, and luxury amenities, could command premium rates during peak season. Even more interesting was that the weekend Marcus and Cassandra were planning their romantic getaway happened to fall during one of the highest demand periods of the year. I spent an entire day photographing every room and angle of the house, writing descriptions that highlighted the stunning ocean views, the gourmet kitchen, the private beach access, and the spacious accommodations perfect for large groups. I described it as a luxury beach experience and set the rates appropriately high. Within 24 hours of posting the listings, my phone was ringing constantly with booking requests. The demand was so high that I was able to charge premium rates and still book every single room for the weekend Marcus had claimed for himself. But I didn't just book one group. I booked 5 separate parties, one for each bedroom. There was the Martinez family from Boston traveling with their 3 young children and looking for a memorable family vacation. A group of college friends celebrating their reunion with a weekend of beach activities and late-night reminiscing. An elderly couple, Harold and Ruth, who were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary and wanted a peaceful retreat by the ocean. A party of recent college graduates planning what they called their last hurrah before starting their adult careers. And finally, a travel blogger named Jenny, who was bringing her videographer boyfriend to create content about luxury East Coast vacation rentals. Each group had different needs and schedules, but they all shared one thing. They had legitimate reservations, paid deposits, and legal rights to use the property for that weekend. I hired a local property management company to handle check-ins and provide guest services, explaining that I was launching a new vacation rental business and wanted everything to run professionally. The manager, A cheerful woman named Susan, who ran several other rental properties on the island, was thrilled to add our premium listing to her portfolio. I also arranged for the house to be thoroughly cleaned and prepared for guests with fresh linens, for all 5 bedrooms, fully stocked bathrooms, and a welcome basket with local specialties for each party. I wanted my guests to have an absolutely perfect experience, partly because it was good business, but mostly because it would make the contrast with Marcus and Cassandra's experience even more dramatic. The night before their planned arrival, I received final confirmations from all 5 guest parties. The Martinez family would be arriving Friday afternoon for a weekend of beach fun with their kids. The college reunion group was planning to arrive Friday evening for what they described as a weekend of reliving our glory days. Harold and Ruth were coming Saturday morning for a quiet anniversary celebration. The recent graduates were arriving Saturday afternoon for their celebration weekend, and Jenny, the travel blogger, was scheduled to arrive Sunday morning to begin documenting what she expected to be an exclusive luxury experience. I made one final call to Patricia to confirm that everything I was doing was completely legal. She assured me that as the property owner, I had every right to rent rooms to paying guests and that Marcus had no legal standing to object to my business decisions. Saturday morning, I drove to Martha's Vineyard myself, not to interfere with anything but to be nearby, in case my presence was needed. I checked into a small inn about 10 minutes away from the beach house and settled in to wait for what I expected would be a very interesting day. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, according to the timeline Marcus had mentioned, I received a call from Susan, the property manager. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, and I could hear confusion in her voice. "I have a situation at your property. There's a man here claiming to be your husband, and he says he has a right to use the house this weekend. He's with a young woman, and they have luggage like they're planning to stay, but all the rooms are already occupied by your guests." "What's the man's name?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "He says he's Marcus Patterson, and he's getting quite upset. He's demanding that I ask the guests to leave so he and his companion can have the house. I explained that everyone has valid reservations and has paid their deposits, but he's insisting he has ownership rights." "Susan," I said calmly, "Marcus Patterson is my estranged husband, and he has no legal right to the property. I am the sole owner, and he is not authorized to be there. If he refuses to leave, please don't hesitate to call the police." "Should I come down there to handle this?" I asked. "That might be helpful," Susan said. "This is getting quite heated, and I think your presence might clarify the situation." 20 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of my beach house to find a scene that was both exactly what I'd expected and more satisfying than I dared hope. Marcus's BMW was parked awkwardly near the front entrance, partially blocking the driveway where several other cars were already parked. I could see the Martinez family's minivan with Massachusetts plates, a Jeep Wrangler with college stickers that obviously belonged to the reunion group, and a pristine Lexus that had to be Harold and Ruth's anniversary vehicle. The front yard was bustling with activity. Children were playing on the lawn while their parents unloaded beach gear. A group of young adults was setting up what looked like the beginnings of a barbecue. And in the middle of all this normal vacation activity, I could see Marcus and Cassandra standing near the front door with their luggage, clearly having an intense conversation with Susan. As I approached the group, I could hear Marcus's voice raised in frustration. "This is ridiculous. I don't care who made reservations. This is my house. I've been coming here for 15 years. Jenny, the travel blogger, was standing nearby with her camera, and I realized she was actually filming the confrontation. Her boyfriend was setting up professional video equipment, apparently thinking this drama was part of the local color they'd come to document. "Excuse me," I said in a clear, caring voice that made everyone turn to look at me. "I think there's been some confusion here." Marcus's face went white when he saw me. Cassandra looked confused, clearly not understanding who I was or why my presence seemed to change the entire dynamic of the situation. Susan approached me with visible relief. "Mrs. Patterson, thank goodness you're here. This gentleman is claiming he has a right to use the property, but as I explained, we have 5 separate parties with confirmed reservations." "Marcus," I said, addressing my husband directly for the first time in 2 weeks. You don't have any right to be here. This is my property, and I've chosen to rent it to paying guests this weekend. Your property. Cassandra spoke for the first time, her voice sharp with confusion. Marcus, what is she talking about? You said this was your beach house. It is, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Tilly, this is insane. You can't just kick me out of my own house. I reached into my purse and pulled out the property deed and ownership documents Patricia had prepared for me. Actually, Marcus, I can. As you can see from these legal documents, I am the sole owner of this property. You have no legal right to be here, and you're currently trespassing. The small crowd of vacation guests had gathered around us, sensing drama, but not quite understanding what they were witnessing. Harold, the elderly man celebrating his anniversary, stepped forward with the kind of authority that comes from years of life experience. Young man, he said to Marcus, if this lady has the legal documents showing she owns the property, and if these nice people have paid for their reservations, then it seems to me you're the one in the wrong here. Jenny, the blogger, was clearly thrilled with this unexpected content, and I could see her filming everything while her boyfriend adjusted his professional camera angles. The college reunion group was watching with the fascination of people who couldn't believe they were witnessing real-life drama. Cassandra's face was cycling through emotions as the reality of the situation sank in. Marcus, she said, her voice rising, you told me we would own this house after the divorce. You said it would be ours. It will be, Marcus said desperately. Tilly, this is vindictive and petty. We can work this out legally. You can't just humiliate me like this. I'm not humiliating you, Marcus, I replied calmly. I'm operating a legal vacation rental business on my property. These guests have paid for accommodations, and I intend to honor their reservations. If you have legal concerns about property ownership, you're welcome to discuss them with your attorney. Susan stepped forward with paperwork. For everyone's reference, she announced, Mrs. Patterson is indeed the sole legal owner of this property, and all of our guests have valid confirmed reservation ones with paid deposits. The property is fully booked for this weekend. The Martinez children, who had been playing on the lawn, approached their father and asked loudly, Daddy, why are those people yelling? Is this still our vacation house? Mr. Martinez put his arms around his children and looked directly at Marcus. I think these folks are confused about something, kids. This nice lady owns the house, and we paid to stay here fair and square. Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him. Paying guests who had every right to be there, a property manager with legal documentation, his wife holding ownership papers, and his mistress whose romantic weekend had just collapsed into public embarrassment. This isn't over, Tilly, he said finally, his voice tight with anger and humiliation. Yes, Marcus, I replied quietly. It is. As Marcus and Cassandra loaded their luggage back into their BMW and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and defeat behind them, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, complete, absolute satisfaction. The weekend was just beginning, and it was going to be everything I'd hoped for, just not for the people who planned to spend it there. The aftermath of that weekend exceeded even my wildest expectations. What I'd intended as the single moment of poetic justice turned into a catalyst for changes I never could have anticipated. Within hours of Marcus and Cassandra's embarrassing departure, Jenny, the travel blogger, had edited and posted a video titled, When Vacation Rental Drama Gets Real, on her social media channels. The video, which showed the confrontation while protecting everyone's privacy with creative editing, went viral within days. Jenny's followers were fascinated by what she described as the most authentic vacation rental experience ever, and the comments were overwhelmingly supportive of my position as the wronged property owner who turned the tables on her cheating husband. The unexpected publicity brought more attention than I could have imagined. Within a week of Jenny's video being posted, I received over 300 booking inquiries through various platforms. The story had struck a chord with people who admired what they saw as a creative and legally satisfying form of justice. But the ripple effects extended far beyond social media fame. Susan, the property manager, called me 3 days after the infamous weekend with the news that changed everything. "Tilly," she said, excitement clear in her voice, "I've never seen anything like the response to your property. Not only are we booked solid for the next 6 months, but I've had inquiries from people wanting to book anniversary parties, family reunions, even a small wedding. The story has given your house a reputation as a place where justice prevails and new beginnings are possible." The financial impact was immediate and significant. The rental income for that single weekend exceeded what Marcus typically spent on Cassandra in a month. The bookings that followed were generating more money than I'd ever earned in my part-time work, and the demand was so high that I was able to charge premium rates year-round. More importantly, the experience of managing the business was awakening parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. I found myself learning about social media marketing, guest experience management, and small business operations. For the first time in years, I felt intellectually challenged and professionally competent in my own right, rather than just as Marcus's wife and supporter. The impact on Marcus and Cassandra's relationship was swift and decisive. According to sources that Susan discreetly shared from the local community, their public humiliation had created a rift that neither of them could overcome. Cassandra felt that Marcus had misled her about his legal rights to the property, while Marcus blamed her for pressuring him into the confrontation that had exposed his lack of ownership. Within 2 weeks of the beach house incident, Cassandra had broken up with Marcus and moved out of the apartment he'd been paying for. She posted a cryptic message on social media about learning the importance of verifying facts before making life decisions, which Jenny's followers immediately connected to the beach house drama. Marcus, meanwhile, was facing financial pressure from multiple directions. Without the beach house as leverage in divorce negotiations, his legal position had weakened considerably. Patricia informed me that his attorney had attempted to claim that Marcus deserved compensation for improvements made to the property, but the documentation showed that most major renovations had been paid for with funds from my separate accounts. The divorce proceedings moved forward much more favorably than I dared hope. Marcus's infidelity, combined with his financial misconduct in using marital funds to support his affair, resulted in a settlement that was heavily weighted in my favor. I retained full ownership of the beach house, received a larger portion of our other assets, and was awarded alimony that reflected Marcus's higher earning potential. But perhaps the most unexpected development was personal. Among the guests who'd been at the house during the famous confrontation weekend, Harold and Ruth, the anniversary couple, had stayed in touch. They'd been so charmed by the property and the story behind their memorable weekend that they'd booked a return visit for the following month. During their second stay, they brought their son David, a 58-year-old widower who was a retired financial planner. David had lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier and was slowly beginning to rebuild his social life. Harold and Ruth thought he might enjoy meeting the remarkable woman who owned the property they'd enjoyed so much. David turned out to be nothing like Marcus. Where Marcus was flashy and image-conscious, David was thoughtful and genuine. Where Marcus had always needed to be the center of attention, David was content to listen to others' stories and offer quiet support. Most importantly, where Marcus had betrayed trust and taken partnerships for granted, David understood the value of honesty and mutual respect. Our friendship developed slowly over the course of several months. David would book stays at the beach house, sometimes overlapping with my own visits when I came to check on the property and meet with Susan. We'd find ourselves having long conversations on the deck, watching sunsets, and sharing stories about our respective journeys through loss and recovery. David never pressured me for more than friendship, never assumed that his interest was automatically reciprocated, and never tried to rush me past my own healing process. His patience and respect for my autonomy was a stark contrast to Marcus's assumption that he could control and manipulate the people in his life. 6 months after the beach house confrontation, Emma and Jake came home for winter break with perspectives on the divorce that surprised me. They'd initially been shocked and confused by their parents' separation, but as they learned more about their father's behavior, their support shifted decisively toward me. "Mom, Emma told me during a long conversation over coffee. We always knew Dad could be selfish, but we didn't realize how much you'd been protecting us from seeing his worst traits. What he did to you and the way he planned to steal your house shows us who he really is. Jake, who'd always been closer to his father, struggled more with the revelations, but ultimately reached a similar conclusion. I'm proud of how you handled everything, he said. You didn't try to turn us against Dad, but you also didn't let him walk all over you. That takes real strength. Both of my children were fascinated by my transformation into a successful vacation rental entrepreneur. They spent their winter break helping me improve the property's online presence, updating the website, and even creating a social media strategy that tastefully capitalized on our story without exploiting the personal pain behind it. As I sit here today, nearly a year after that life-changing Friday afternoon, when I discovered Marcus's betrayal, I'm amazed at how completely my world has transformed. The beach house that was once the symbol of my broken marriage has become the foundation of my independence and the source of my financial security. The vacation rental business has exceeded every expectation. Last month alone, the property generated more income than I used to earn in 6 months of part-time work. More importantly, the work itself has given me a sense of purpose and accomplishment that I'd forgotten was possible. Every positive guest review, every successful booking, every smooth check-in process represents my competence and independence. The healing journey hasn't been linear or easy. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if I'd made the right choices, days when loneliness threatened to overwhelm my newfound confidence, moments when I questioned whether my dramatic response to Marcus's betrayal had been mature or petty. But time has given me perspective on what really happened that weekend. I wasn't just reclaiming my property, I was reclaiming my agency, my self-respect, and my right to determine my own future. Marcus had assumed I would passively accept whatever terms he chose to offer, that I would quietly surrender the home that represented our family's happiest memories, so that he could build new memories there with someone else. Instead, I discovered that I was capable of things I'd never imagined. I could learn new technologies, master social media platforms, run a successful business, and navigate complex legal and financial challenges. The woman who'd once deferred to her husband's expertise in all practical matters had become someone who could solve problems, make decisions, and create opportunities. The relationship with David has continued to develop slowly and authentically based on mutual respect rather than need or desperation. We're planning a small ceremony next spring, not a wedding, but a commitment celebration that acknowledges our choice to build a partnership between two people who've learned the value of honesty and equality. David has never tried to change anything about my business or my relationship with the beach house. Instead, he supported my success and celebrated my independence. He understands that the woman he fell in love with is someone who emerged from crisis stronger and more capable than before, and he has no interest in turning me back into someone who depends on others for security or validation. Marcus, meanwhile, has struggled to rebuild his life after the collapse of his relationship with Cassandra and the unfavorable divorce settlement. He's had to downsize his lifestyle significantly, and according to mutual acquaintances, he's found it difficult to maintain relationships with women who discover his history of infidelity and financial deception. Sometimes I feel sorry for him, particularly when I think about the family life we once shared and the man I thought I'd married. But mostly, I feel grateful that his betrayal forced me to discover capabilities and strength I never would have developed otherwise. The beach house continues to be a place of joy and new beginnings, but now those beginnings belong to all the families, couples, and individuals who come there to celebrate anniversaries, reunions, proposals, and fresh starts. Every guest who leaves a positive review is validating not just my hospitality, but my decision to transform a symbol of betrayal into a source of hope. I've learned that sometimes the most devastating betrayals can become unexpected gifts. When someone you trust completely shows you that they never really valued what you shared, it forces you to discover what you're capable of creating on your own. When someone assumes you're too weak or too dependent to fight back, They give you the opportunity to prove just how wrong they are. The most important lesson I've learned is that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. At 54, I'm more confident, more capable, and more content than I ever was during 28 years of marriage to someone who took my contributions for granted. Marcus thought he was trading up when he chose Cassandra over our life together. What he actually did was give me the freedom to discover that I didn't need him to be complete successful or happy. The beach house he planned to steal became the foundation of my independence, and the future he thought he was denying me became better than anything we'd ever shared. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well, but it's even better when you get to do it in the house they thought they were taking away from you. Now, I'd love to hear from all of you. Have you ever had to reclaim something that belonged to you? How did you handle a situation where someone underestimated your strength? Share your stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help other people going through similar challenges. Don't forget to hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and make sure to subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength you never knew you had. Share this video with anyone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to take control of your own story. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish each of you the courage to fight for what's rightfully yours and the wisdom to recognize your own power when life forces you to use it.